Joe Biden did not need to come out and repeat these false claims that this was a politically motivated prosecution. Hunter Biden pled guilty to all of these charges because the evidence was overwhelming. So that, I think, is the really significant indictment, if you will.
Since 2018, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's embattled son, had been under investigation for various tax crimes, money laundering, and lying on a federal form when he bought a firearm. After years of back and forth and alleged slow-walked investigations, Hunter Biden was finally set to face sentencing for two separate cases. First, for his tax evasion case, where he was slapped with 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor tax offences from the years 2016 to 2019 that he did plead guilty to. And secondly, his 3 felony counts for illegally buying a gun when he was using drugs in 2018. But today, Hunter Biden will no longer need to face the hands of justice after his father, President Joe Biden, with only 7 weeks left in office, decided to hand a pardon to his son. Joining me now to discuss this insane backflip from the president is someone all too familiar with this saga, attorney Tristan Leavitt, who represents the 2 IRS whistleblowers who came forward with bombshell claims about the stymied investigation into Hunter's tax crimes. Tristan, thank you so much for your time today. You've spent the better part of the last few years representing whistleblowers who had claimed that Hunter Biden was not treated like the average American to his benefit. What was your reaction to the news that he had been pardoned today?
It actually didn't come as a surprise. I expected that before the end of his presidency, Joe Biden would pardon Hunter, but the sweep of it was certainly unprecedented and came as a surprise, both in terms of the just covering all acts, as well as going back for 10 years, almost 11 years. And I also, it was completely, did not reflect well on Joe Biden's part that he also took this opportunity to claim that the prosecution was politically motivated. Clearly, Hunter Biden had pled guilty to all of these charges. He had, supposedly accepted responsibility. And for Joe Biden to then parrot these talking points that it was politically motivated when the investigation was started by a progressive Democrat, which, again, is the president's own party. It had nothing to do with politics. So I thought that was extremely disappointing.
What do you think about people who have now labelled Joe Biden a liar for now on multiple occasions claiming that he wouldn't pardon his son or interfere with the justice system? And he also misled Americans when committing to running for 4 more years as a capable president. Do you think that he's now tarnished his last few months, now being branded a liar?
I don't think that it only happened at the end of his presidency. As you note, I think there are a lot of opportunities that the White House has had to tell the truth to the American people that they have passed up. So this isn't a new thing and doesn't come as a surprise to me.
Your 2 whistleblowers claimed the opposite of what Joe Biden says. He said that Hunter was treated unfairly, that this investigation was carried out differently to the way that it should be because he was the president's son. But your clients say that Hunter was given preferential treatment. So is there any truth to what the president has said about this overall case against Hunter?
The charges against Hunter Biden were extremely strong, and if they weren't, he never would have pled guilty to them. He never would have sought to avoid a trial by pleading guilty in advance of the trial. So the IRS agents worked very meticulously to assemble their case over multiple years. It was actually a fairly straightforward case. In fact, it would probably not have taken multiple years if they hadn't been interfered with at various stages and told to delay until after various elections. So again, the case against Hunter Biden was straightforward, and any American would have, any American taxpayer would have received consequences for that. But Hunter Biden will not now. And in part, that's because of earlier decisions, even by people in the Justice Department. So they already allowed the statute of limitations to expire on earlier tax charges. Nevertheless, Joe Biden's pardon covered all the way back to 2014, the year that Hunter first began receiving payments from Ukrainian energy company Burisma.
The investigation into Hunter's tax crimes was from the years 2016 to 2019, but last year, the IRS whistleblowers that you represent claimed that Hunter Biden still owes $145,000 in unpaid taxes from his income of $400,000 from the years 2014 to 2015, but due to the DOJ's slow-walked investigation, the statute of limitations was left to expire, allowing Hunter to get away with tax evasion. In the testimony to the House Oversight Committee, it was found that if Hunter Biden wanted to voluntarily pay off this debt, he could. How does this contradict Joe Biden's claim that his son had been unfairly treated when there's $145,000 yet to be paid by Hunter?
Well, there are multiple there are multiple false claims in Joe Biden's statement, and certainly one of those is that his son has already paid off all the taxes that he owed. He hasn't done so. He didn't do so for the 2014 and 2015 years. He also didn't do so for the 2019 and 2018 tax years, where Hunter Biden claimed prostitutes and others as tax write-offs. That has never been accounted for to the U.S. Treasury. So that's certainly one of the things that Joe Biden falsely claimed. Another is that Hunter Biden's taxes owed were all during his addiction. And Hunter Biden's own book makes clear that by 2018, as he was in 2019, when he owed those 2018 taxes, he claims he was already sober. So it's just one of many, many lies that have come out of this whole affair. And again, Hunter Biden, if he were anyone else, would have been punished for this a long time ago. Now he never will serve any sentence.
Now, we know from testimonies from your clients they were not granted access to various investigative steps, such as even looking at Hunter Biden's damning laptop that we now know the FBI had verified back in 2019. How could more access have led to other charges, other crimes from the president's son being laid against him, apart from his tax charge and the firearm charge?
So the crux of the whistleblower's allegations as it relates to the underlying investigation are kind of twofold. One of them is that they were never allowed to look at any charges that would have potentially involved Joe Biden. So they weren't allowed to ask questions about him in their interviews. They weren't allowed to follow up on subpoenas and other things. So that's one whole area that the public will likely never know the truth of. The other piece of it are not crimes that would have been within the IRS's jurisdiction, but there were Foreign Agents Registration Act charges that were investigated by the FBI. This pardon appears to have been, aimed at that as well, to simply cover those whole years, to say that all crimes during that period that may have been committed are pardoned. So the FBI, we've heard rumors that on and again, off again, they were examining those charges. But, Hunter Biden did a lot for Ukrainian entities and, Ukrainian state-controlled entities. And so those typically you would be looking at foreign agents registration charges, same as for efforts on behalf of China. And in the case of, Chinese energy companies and others, the same people that were involved in those transactions did have to register under FARA. So there's clearly a lot there that investigators were looking at and considering potential criminal charges for. Now, the world will likely never know the full truth of what happened.
Tristan, is there no other way for the Republican Party, once sworn in next year, to orchestrate further committee hearings to investigate more crimes for Hunter Biden, even though he's now pardoned?
It certainly is possible for them to hold hearings, and in fact, now that Hunter Biden is in no legal peril, he no longer has access to plead the Fifth Amendment under the United States Constitution. So if his testimony can't incriminate him, then they could compel his testimony. But he's obviously not going to be a very useful fact witness for a lot of, even if required to testify, it's unlikely that he'll provide much useful information. And without investigative tools that you would have in the course of an investigation, it's unlikely that Congress would want to spend the time on this to really dig all the way back into what fully happened. And at this point, some of that evidence is over 10 years old. So there's just not, there's not a great path forward to really be able to uncover everything that happened.
Because Joe Biden dates Hunter's pardon back to 2014, so it now stretches those 10 years, 2014 to 2024. Does that verify that the president was worried about these unpaid tax dues from 2014 to 2015?
Well, yeah, it likely, whether it had to do with the tax years themselves, which again, the statute of limitations had expired on, so there really was no chance of tax charges. What there was a chance of was the Foreign Agents Registration Act charges, potentially. So that's the main legal peril that Hunter Biden could have faced there. And that's clearly why Joe Biden went all the way back to 2014 for that pardon. That, of course, is also the period that his own conduct is most implicated in, when he went to Ukraine and insisted that they fire the prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, that they, that was necessary for them to receive further aid. All of that directly involved Joe Biden is also covered by this period of the pardon, where Hunter Biden was at the center of it all.
Tristan, from your legal background, do you think that Hunter Biden would have faced any jail time had he been sentenced as planned this month?
Part of the real significance of this pardon coming when it did is that had there been a sentencing, I think the American people would have been able to see just how severe this conduct was, because the sentencing would have been significant, most likely. And so to have even prevented that allows the Bidens to maintain the fiction that these were simple, these were charges that weren't fair, that they were minor, that this wasn't a big deal, and nevertheless required an 11-year pardon.
What kind of political ammunition has Joe Biden's pardoning of his son just handed to the Trump administration?
Well, again, by setting a precedent of both pardoning one's own family member and also issuing the most sweeping pardon in American history, I think President Trump will it really eliminates a lot of the arguments people might make as he considers pardons of others, including defendants from January 6th event at the Capitol, including if other things are to come up, this really has handed the incoming White House a real gift. And a lot of Democrats are clearly very frustrated by that, because this was just not necessary and really harmful to Democrats politically.
Just finally, Tristan, Joe Biden isn't the first president to be pardoning a family member or pardoning someone close to them. Could you argue that any father would do the same thing that Joe Biden is doing for his son?
Look, if Joe Biden had come forward and said, "I love my son, I have the power to pardon him, so I'm going to," I think that would have been the most straightforward thing to do. But by not only covering such a wide period of time, but also covering any acts that Hunter Biden may have committed, rather than specifically pardoning for him for these charges against him, I think that's very significant. And on top of that, no, Joe Biden did not need to come out and repeat these false claims that this was a politically motivated prosecution. Hunter Biden pled guilty to all of these charges because the evidence was overwhelming. So that, I think, is the really significant indictment, if you will, not in a legal sense, but in a moral sense, against Joe Biden. That to have added this extra lie to the American people at the end is just a slap in the face to the American people.